Hello and welcome to another day in our series of Lent Readings for 2023, considering people who encountered Jesus. Today it's day 18 and we're going to go back to look at someone I mentioned yesterday. As Jesus was on his way to see Jairus' daughter, a woman who was suffering from bleeding reaches out and touches the edge of his robe. While Jesus is on his way with Jairus, a woman who had been suffering with bleeding reaches out to touch him, in the hope that she will be healed, but remain unnoticed. But Jesus knows. I'm going to read the account from Mark's Gospel today, because Matthew, whose account we've been reading for most readings, is only 3 verses long, and Mark gives a lot more detail. And we'll find that in Mark chapter 5 from verse 24. A large crowd followed and pressed around him, and a woman was there who had been subject to bleeding for 12 years. She had suffered a great deal under the care of many doctors and had spent all she had, yet instead of getting better, she grew worse. When she heard about Jesus, she came up behind him in the crowd and touched his cloak, because she thought, "If I touch his clothes, I will be healed." Immediately her bleeding stopped, and she felt in her body that she had been freed from her suffering. At once, Jesus realized that power had gone out from him. He turned around in the crowd and asked, "Who touched my clothes?" "You see the people crowding against you," his disciples answered, "and yet you ask, 'Who touched me?'" But Jesus kept looking around to see who had done it. Then the woman, knowing what had happened to her, came and fell at his feet and trembled with fear. She told him the truth. He said to her, "Daughter, your faith has healed you. Go in peace and be freed from your suffering." This unnamed woman is suffering from persistent bleeding for 12 years, and Mark tells us she spent all her money on medical treatment without success. In fact, she got worse rather than better. She saw Jesus as her last hope and planned to reach out and touch him without being noticed. In all likelihood, this was because her bleeding would have made her unclean by Jewish law, and subsequently she should not have been out in public, especially in a crowd so large that it says that everyone was pressing forward to see Jesus. Her faith in Jesus proved correct. But Jesus wouldn't let it end there. He calls her forward that what he had done might be shared as a testimony. If Jesus has done something in your life, you have a testimony to share for his glory. Maybe someone listening to this knows that God has done something in their life and they haven't shared it yet. Let me encourage you. Go and tell someone that God may be glorified. I believe there are 4 types of healing, and all of them are divine and give glory to God. Firstly, healing by design. Our bodies were created by God to heal and repair and defend themselves. A scab forms over a cut until the skin appears. White blood cells and antibodies attack viruses and bacteria that infect us. Secondly, healing by medicine. The knowledge, skills and equipment of the medical profession are a gracious gift from God, which he blesses with new developments in each generation. Thirdly, healing by miracle. That moment, usually in response to prayer, where God steps in to bring healing in a supernatural way, as with this woman. And lastly, eternal healing. The trumpet sounds, the Lord returns, the dead are raised to new life and will be made new. There'll be no more death or dying. Physical bodies will be made whole forever. I want to acknowledge and thank God every time he heals, whether it's through type 1 and 2, healing by design and medicine, and I hope and pray that we'll see more of healings by type 3, miraculously, happening among us. But all these are just signs that point towards that day when Jesus returns, when healing will be complete, when cancer, cholera, COVID, Alzheimer's, schizophrenia, blindness, deafness, disability, operating theatres, ambulance, drugs, whatever, will be forgotten as ancient history, as God brings all things new. Until next time, have a blessed day.